See, I'm hoping it gauges more interaction on YouTube because, if I'm being completely honest, my YouTube isn't going the way I want it to. I'm having a better success rate on TikTok, but even then, like, I'm still new at this. I'm just learning as I go, to be honest. But I am taking all feedback and comments on board. That being said, I got some nails, which I don't normally do because of just my job and things like that. I don't really need them, nor do I like them for work. So, you know, that's fine. But for this purpose, I'm more than happy to do what's best for you guys, because at the end of the day, it's you guys who matter when I'm making these videos. Please do like, comment, or subscribe. If you like these videos that are coming now, or take a look at my Dress to Impress series. I've created a playlist on my channel specifically for those longer videos, because I really do enjoy the gameplay as well. So I'm thinking for YouTube, if I stick to sort of gameplay and reading, that sort of thing, that could be the niche I've been looking for. So we'll see. But any support is greatly, greatly appreciated. As I say, I'm new at this, so I'm a very, very, very small creator at the moment. But more than anything, all I want is for interaction. You know, a few comments, a few followers that come by every video, that sort of thing. I'm not expecting to get big, not at all, not at all, not at all, not at all. But if I can just help people the way ASMR has helped me, then that's a win for me. Backdrop to be determined at a later date. I'm currently filming in my gaming room, so my partner's setup is there behind me. Then we've got some pops up here, and then further along the other side we've got array of my Stitch ornaments and collections, because I love Stitch. Anyway, I'm filming landscape. I'm hoping this turns out better than my previous videos, because I've been doing them all in TikTok form, which is another thing I need to stop doing. Anyway, that being said, you guys, let's get straight into the reading video. I might change my mic cover for that so the whispers are a bit more crispy, but we'll see. Now that I've got my nails on, I'll do some page scratches as well, and some tracing. So sit back and enjoy the video. A lot of you might have already read this book, so apologies if you have. I'm a little bit behind because I was meant to read it last summer, well, the summer just gone, and I went to Cyprus and it was so hot. So every time I pulled my book out by the pool, I needed to instantly get in the pool to cool down. Also, I got pre-warned that if you read in the sun, if it's too hot, the pages can get stuck together and claws on my hands. My puppy's claws are getting a bit much. Okay, so let's jump straight in. Chapter 1. The forest had become a labyrinth of snow and ice. I'd been monitoring the perimeters of the thick for an hour, and my vantage point in the crook of a tree branch had turned useless. The gusting wind blew thick flurries to sweep away my tracks, but buried along with them any signs of potential quarry. Hunger had brought me farther from home than I usually risked, but winter was the hard time. The animals had pulled in, going deeper into the woods that I could follow, leaving me to pick off stragglers one by one, praying they'd last until spring. They hadn't. I wiped my numb fingers over my eyes, brushing away the flakes clinging to my lashes. Here there were no telltale trees stripped of bark to mark the deer's passing. They hadn't yet moved on. They would remain until the bark ran out, then travel north past the wolves' territory, and perhaps into the fairylands of Perithian, where no mortals would dare to go, not unless they had a death wish. A shudder skittered down my spine at the thought, and I shoved it away, focusing on my surroundings on the task ahead. That was all I could do. I'd been able to do for years. Focus on surviving the week, the day, the hour ahead. And now with the snow, I'd be lucky to spot anything, especially from my position up the tree, scarcely able to see 15 feet ahead. Stifling a groan as my stiff limbs protested at the movement, I unstrung my bow before easing off the tree. The icy snow crunched under my fraying boots, and I ground my teeth. Low visibility, unnecessary noise. I was well on my way to yet another fruitless hunt. Only a few hours of daylight remained. If I didn't leave soon, I'd have to navigate my way home in the dark, and the warnings of the town hunters still rang fresh in my mind. Giant wolves were on the prowl, and in numbers. Not to mention whispers of strange folk spotted in the area, tall and eerie and deadly. Anything but fairies, the hunters had beseeched our long-forgotten gods, and I had secretly prayed alongside them. In 8 years we'd been living in our village, 2 days' journey from the immortal border of Perithian. We'd been sparred an attack through travelling peddlers of Perithian. Sometimes brought stories of distant border towns left in splinters and bones and ashes. These accounts, once rare enough to be dismissed by the village elders as hearsay, had in recent months become commonplace whisperings on every market day. I had risked much in coming so far into the forest, but we'd finished our last loaf of bread yesterday, and the remainder of our dried meat the day before. Still, I would have rather spent another night with a hungry belly than found myself satisfying the appetite of a wolf or a fairy. Not that there were much of me to feast on. I'd have turned gangly by this time of the year, and could count on a good number of my ribs. cottage empty-handed yet again. After a few minutes of carefully searching, I crouched in a cluster of snow-heavy brambles. Through the thorns I had a half-decent view of a clearing and the small brook flowing through it. A few holes in the ice suggested it was frequently used. Hopefully something would come by. Hopefully. I sighed through my nose, digging the tip of my bow into the ground, and leaned my forehead against the crude curve of wood. We wouldn't last another week without food, and too many families had already started begging me to hope for handouts for the wealthier townfolk. I'd witnessed firsthand exactly how far their charity went. I eased into a more comfortable position and calmed my breathing, straining to listen to the forest over the wind. The snow fell and fell, dancing and curling like sparkling spine drifts, the white fresh and clean against the brown and grey of the world. And despite myself, despite my numb limbs, I quieted that relentlessness, vicious part of my mind, to take in the snow-veiled woods. Once it had been second nature to savour the contrast of the new grass against the dark, tilled soil or amethyst brush nestled in the folds of emerald silk. Once I dreamed and breathed and thought in colour and light and shape. Sometimes I would even indulge in envisioning a day where my sisters were married and it were only me and father, with enough food to go around, enough money to buy some paint, and enough time to put these colours and shapes down on paper or canvas or the cottage walls. Not likely to happen anytime soon, perhaps ever. So I was left with moments like this, admiring the glint of the pale winter light and snow. I couldn't remember the last time I'd done it, bothered to notice anything lovely or interesting. Stolen hours in the decrepit barn with Isaac Hale didn't count. Those times were hungry and empty and sometimes cruel, but never lonely. Lovely. The howling wind calmed into a soft sighing. The snow fell lazily now, in big fat clumps that gathered along every nook and bump of the trees. Mesmerizing, the lethal, gentle beauty of the snow. I'd soon have to return to the muddy, frozen roads of the village, to the cramped heat of our cottage. Some small, fragmented part of me recoiled at the thought. Bushes rustled across the clearing. Drawing my bow was a matter of instinct. I peered through the thorns and my breath caught. Less than 30 paces away stood a small doe, not yet too scrawny from winter, but desperate enough to wrench bark from a tree in the clearing. A deer like that could feed my family for a week or more. My mouth watered. Quiet as the wind hissed through the dead leaves, I took aim. She continued tearing off strips of bark, chewing slowly, utterly unaware that her death waited yards away. I could dry its gaze set on the oblivious doe. He was enormous, the size of a pony, and though I'd been warned about their presence, my mouth turned bone dry. But worse than his size was his unnatural stealth. Even as he inched closer in the brush, he remained unheard, unspotted by the doe. No animal that massive could be so quiet, but if he was no ordinary animal, if he was a Prithian origin, if he was somehow a fairy, then being eaten was the least of my concerns. If he was a fairy, I should already be running. Yet maybe it would be a favour to the world, to my village, to myself, to kill him while I remained undetected. Putting an arrow through his eye would be no burden. But despite his size, he looked like a wolf, moved like a wolf. Animal, I reassured myself, just an animal. I didn't let myself consider the alternative, not when I needed my head clear, my breathing steady. I had a hunting knife and 3 arrows. The first 2 were ordinary arrows, simple and efficient, and likely no more than bee stings to a wolf that size. But the 3rd arrow, the longest and the heaviest one, I'd bought from a travelling peddler during a summer where we had enough coppers for extra luxuries. An arrow carved from mountain of ash, armed with an iron head. From songs sung to us as lullabies over our cradles, we all knew from infancy that fairies hated iron, but it was the ash wood that made their immortal healing magic falter long enough for a human to make a killing blow. Also legend and rumour claimed. The only proof we had of the ash's effectiveness was its sheer rarity. I had not seen drawings of the trees, but never the one with my own eyes, not after the high fae had burned them all long ago. So few remained, most of them small and sickly and hidden by the nobility with high-walled groves. I'd spent weeks after my purchase debating whether that overpriced bit of wood had been a waste of money or a fake, or for 3 years the ash arrow had sat unused in my quiver. Now I drew it, keeping my movements minimal, efficient, anything to avoid that monstrous wolf looking in my direction. The arrow was long and heavy enough to inflict damage, possibly kill him, if I aimed right. My chest became so tight it ached, and in that moment I realised my life boiled down to one question. Was the wolf alone? I gripped my bow and drew the string farther back. I was a decent shot, but I'd never faced a wolf. I thought it made me lucky, even blessed. But now, I didn't know where to hit or how fast they moved. I couldn't afford to miss, not when I only had 1 ash arrow. And it was indeed a fairy's heart pounding under that fur. Then good riddance. Good riddance after all their kind has done to us. I wouldn't risk this one later creeping into our village to slaughter and maim and torment. Let him die here and now. I'd be glad to end him. The wolf crept closer, and a twig snapped beneath one of his paws, each bigger than my hand. The doe went rigid. She glanced to either side, ears straining towards the grey sky. With the wolf's downwind position, she couldn't see or smell him. body so perfectly blended into the snow and shadows, sank onto its haunches. The doe was still staring in the wrong direction. I glanced from the doe to the wolf and back again. At least he was alone. At least I'd been spared that much. But the wolf scared the doe off. I was left with nothing but a starving, oversized wolf, possibly a fairy, looking for the next best meal. And if he killed her, destroying precious amounts of hide and fat. If I judged wrongly, my life wasn't the only that would be lost. Sorry, I couldn't see that. But my life had been reduced to nothing but risks these past 8 years. I'd been hunting in the woods and had picked correctly most of the time. The wolf shot from the brush in the flash of grey and white and black, his yellow fangs gleaming. He was even more gargantuan in the open, a marvel of muscle and speed and brute strength. The doe didn't stand a chance. I fired the ash arrow before he destroyed much else of her. The arrow found its mark in his side, and I could have sworn the ground itself shuddered. He barked in pain, releasing the doe's neck as his blood sprayed on the snow, so ruby bright. His whirled toward me, those yellow eyes wide, hackles raised. His low growl reverberated in the empty pit of my stomach as I surged to my feet, snow churning around me, another arrow drawn. But the wolf merely looked at me, his maw stained with blood, my ash arrow protruding so vulgarly by his side. The snow began to fall again. He looked, and with some sort of awareness and surprise that made the fire my second arrow, just in case the intelligence was of an immortal, wicked sort. He didn't try to dodge the arrow as it went clean through his wide yellow eye. He collapsed to the ground. Colour and darkness whirled, eddying in my vision, mixing with the snow. His legs were twitching as the low whine sliced through the wind. Impossible. He should be dead, not dying. The arrow was through his eye almost to the goose fletching. But wolf or fairy, it didn't matter. Not with that ash arrow buried in his side. He'd be dead soon enough. Still, my hands shook as I brushed off snow and edged closer, still keeping a good distance. Blood gushed from the wounds I'd given him, staining the snow crimson. He pawed at the ground, his breathing already slowing. Was he in so much pain, or was his whimper just an attempt to shove death away? I wasn't sure. I wanted to know. The snow swirled around us. I stared at him until the coat of charcoal and obsidian and ivory ceased rising and falling. Wolf. Definitely just a wolf, despise his size. The tightness in my chest eased, and I loosed a sigh, my breath clouding in front of me. At least the ash arrow had proved itself to be lethal, regardless of who or what it took down. A rapid examination of the doe told me I could carry only one animal, and even that would be a struggle. But it was a shame to leave that wolf. Though it wasted precious minutes during which way the predator could smell the fresh blood, I skinned him and cleaned my arrows as best I could. If anything, it warmed my hands. I wrapped the bloody side of his pelt around the doe's death wound before I hoisted her across my shoulders. It was several miles back to our cottage, and I didn't need a trail of blood leading every animal with legs of the deer and spared a final glance at the steaming carcass of the wolf. His remaining golden eye now stared at the snow-heavy sky, and for a moment I wished I had it in me to feel remorse for the dead thing. But this was the forest, and it was winter. Okay, so we will carry on with chapter 2 next time. That was chapter 1. Please do leave a comment if you enjoyed the video. If there's any tips, I know I stuttered on a few words. I didn't have my glasses on, so sometimes I see a word and it might not be the exact word it says on the paper. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed the first chapter of acotar, and I hope you tune in